The security guard blocked the hallway and told the old man in the janitor's uniform that he couldn't be in the restricted area. The janitor stood quietly, mop in hand, but his eyes were focused on something no one else could see, that faint smell of gas that would change everything in 20 minutes. This is the story of how one man could be invisible, and then how that same man could save 150 lives. After what happened in Cleveland, Ohio that night, nobody would ever call Bob Martinez just a janitor again. Bob Martinez, 62 years old, a night shift janitor at St. Mary's Hospital for 20 years. Every night he clocked in at 11 p.m., clocked out at 7 a.m. For 20 years he repeated the same routine, mopping hallways, cleaning rooms, emptying trash cans. But Bob's story ran much deeper than that. Back in the 1980s, he worked for the Cleveland Fire Department. For 15 years, he ran into burning buildings, detected gas leaks, and saved lives. He was a hero firefighter until a knee injury ended his career in 1995. After retirement, he wanted a quiet life. He found work at the hospital. It wasn't physically demanding. It was a peaceful environment. Nobody expected him to be a hero. They just wanted him to clean. As the years passed, Bob became the invisible man at the hospital. Doctors didn't notice him, nurses walked past him, administrators forgot he existed. He was just Bob the janitor. But Bob saw everything, heard everything, paid attention to every detail. March 28, 2023, Tuesday night. Bob started his shift like any other night. The hospital seemed calm as usual. There were 23 patients in the ICU, 89 patients in general wards, and 15 patients in the emergency room. A total of 38 staff members were working the night shift. At 11:30 p.m., Bob went down to the basement. Checking the boiler room was part of his routine. But something was different that night. The air smelled kind of weird, a faint, sweet smell. Most people wouldn't notice it, but Bob's experienced nose recognized it immediately. Natural gas. At first, he wasn't too worried. Maybe it's just a small leak, he thought. The maintenance guys can handle it in the morning. But as the hours passed, the smell got stronger. At 1 a.m. he checked again. The smell had gotten much worse. Bob knew from his firefighter experience, this wasn't just a normal leak. This was a serious gas leak. And if the concentration kept building up, any spark could cause a disaster. 1:15 a.m. Bob sprang into action. First, he went to the third-floor nurses' station. He approached Sarah, the duty nurse, and warned her about the serious gas leak in the basement, explaining that it was dangerous and couldn't wait until morning. Sarah dismissed him without looking up from her paperwork, telling him that as a janitor, technical issues weren't his responsibility and that the maintenance team would handle it tomorrow morning. When Bob insisted it couldn't wait, she brushed him off, asking him not to bother her with crazy stuff in the middle of the night. Bob didn't give up. He went to shift supervisor David's office, where David was working on staff schedules. Bob explained the emergency situation and the need for immediate evacuation. David was annoyed, questioning Bob's expertise and telling him to focus on his cleaning duties rather than creating panic. When Bob mentioned his firefighter background, David dismissed him as a retired firefighter who was no longer in that business, calling his concerns nonsense. As a last resort, Bob went to the hospital security chief. Mike was monitoring the security cameras when Bob approached him about the gas leak and explosion risk. Mike shook his head, reminding Bob of last month's false alarm about a water pipe burst, labeling him as just an anxious guy. Bob insisted this was different and really dangerous. Mike explained that if there really was a gas leak, the automatic alarm systems would activate, and since no alarm was going off, there was no problem. Bob was desperate. Nobody was listening to him. Everyone saw him as just a janitor, but he knew their time was running out. 2 a.m. Bob went back down to the basement. The gas smell was now unbearable. His eyes were starting to water. Breathing was getting difficult. With his firefighter experience, he calculated that at this concentration, any electrical spark, cigarette, or even static electricity could cause a disaster. And the concentration was building every minute. Bob wrestled with his conscience. Nobody was listening to him, but he couldn't just stand by and let 150 people die. These were patients, nurses, doctors, innocent people. He had to make a choice. Either he'd do nothing, wait until morning, and watch what happened, Or he'd act on his own initiative, break protocol, and maybe lose his job. Bob pulled out his old firefighter badge from his pocket, the badge he'd kept for years. He looked at it and whispered to himself that once a firefighter, always a firefighter. He'd made his decision. The rescue operation. 10:13 minutes, 2:15 a.m. Bob started his own evacuation operation at the hospital. His plan was simple. First, move the most vulnerable, then everyone else to safety. First, he went to the ICU. There were 23 patients here. Most of them couldn't move. When duty nurse Lisa questioned what he was doing, Bob explained that all their lives were in danger, and they needed to move the patients to the main lobby. Lisa protested that he was out of his mind and couldn't move patients. Bob explained about the gas leak and explosion risk, telling her they would all die if they stayed. He started wheeling the first patient out on a stretcher, despite Lisa's protests. When Lisa saw Bob's determination and heard him say that she could come with him to save her life, or stay behind, but that he couldn't abandon these patients, she started helping him. Together they moved the patients one by one to the main lobby. Then he went to the general wards, where there were more patients. He approached Nurse Amy, explaining the emergency situation and the need to evacuate everyone. Amy questioned his actions, asking if he was crazy for wanting to evacuate patients in the middle of the night. Bob asked her to trust him just this once, explaining that their lives were in danger. Hearing the sincerity in Bob's voice, Amy started helping him. The patients were confused, but they cooperated because of Bob's authority. 2:35 a.m., Bob encountered Dr. Nancy, who questioned the evacuation. Bob explained about the gas leak and explosion risk, telling her he was moving everyone to a safe area. Dr. Nancy reminded him that he was a janitor and couldn't make such decisions. Bob revealed his background as a former firefighter, asking her to trust him. When Dr. Nancy saw Bob's seriousness, she started helping him too. 2:47 a.m., Bob was moving the last group to the main lobby. Right at that moment, they heard a terrible sound. Boom! The entire basement exploded. The building's foundations shook. Windows cracked. The lights went out. Emergency generators kicked in. Bob tried to calm everyone in the main lobby, telling them to stay calm and explaining that there had been an explosion, but they were all safe. Fire department and ambulances were on the way. Dr. Nancy looked at Bob and realized that if he hadn't evacuated them, the consequences would have been catastrophic. Bob told her not to think about that now and to focus on making sure everyone was safe first. Fire crews arrived within 5 minutes. Ambulances took the injured to other hospitals. Thankfully, because of Bob, there were no serious injuries. The fire chief approached Bob, asking if he was the one who led the evacuation operation. When Bob confirmed his identity, the fire chief told him he was a real hero and that if he hadn't acted, 150 people would have lost their lives that night. The next morning, Bob Martinez was no longer just a janitor. Local news covered his story. Hospital administration issued a formal apology. Hospital director Dr. Wilson said at a press conference that Bob Martinez was a true hero whose brave decision and quick action saved 150 lives and that they were grateful to him. The mayor gave Bob the Hero of the Year award. The fire department held a special ceremony in his honor, but all Bob said was that he just did what was right for others and that once a firefighter, always a firefighter. That night, Bob Martinez, the invisible man, became a hero in everyone's eyes, and nobody would ever see him as just a janitor again. This story teaches us that real heroes are sometimes found in the most unexpected places. What matters is being able to make the right decision at the right time.